This is Dr. Seth Gilson. This is the Art of Mindful Medicine, episode number 27. I know this one looks a little different than the others, so I appreciate you being a little patient with me here for a minute. So in this episode, in the middle of this episode, just about like halfway, two-thirds of the way through, Instagram decided to cut out on us. So I was unable to have the whole recording for this episode with Dr. Joel Kahn, who is a very well-known vegan cardiologist in the United States. And basically what I decided to do is go from my notes and give you guys a recap of some of the things we talked about. Some of it will be repeated, some of it won't be repeated. But please, one of the things that he does say is to feel free to reach out to him or me, and we can try and give you guys the information that we can or that you need however we can. So first I'm going to do is open with the little intro here. So Dr. Kahn is a holistic cardiologist who's been practicing cardiology since 1983. He's a graduate of the University of Michigan School of Medicine and is the founder of the Kahn Center for Cardiac Longevity. In his practice, he's decided to thoroughly explore non-traditional diagnostic tools, prevention tactics, and nutrition-based recovery protocols. Adopting a plant-based diet himself, Dr. Kahn passionately lectures throughout the country on the health benefits of a plant-based anti-aging diet. He seeks to inspire a new generation of thought leaders to think scientifically and critically about the body's ability to heal itself through proper nutrition. He is also an author of multiple books, 2 international bestsellers, The Whole Heart Solution and Dead Execs Don't Get Bonuses, as well as author of more than 150 scientific articles. And for anybody that knows anything about publishing scientific articles, that's a lot. Dr. Kahn has also been featured in and appeared on multiple popular media platforms, from Reader's Digest, the Huffington Post, and Mind Body Green, to the Joe Rogan Experience podcast and TV show The Doctors. I definitely recommend you go check out some of those interviews. There's some really solid information there. He believes absolutely no one should be surprised by heart disease, as it can be diagnosed very early and reversed. One of Dr. Kahn's desires is to prevent all future heart attacks by breaking through to the public to educate and inspire a new holistic lifestyle by eating clean, sweating clean, and applying cutting-edge science. So that's a little brief overview of some of the awesome things that Dr. Kahn has done in his career. And then, of course, if you've watched any of the other episodes, that I always like to go into and start with gratitude. So 3 things that Dr. Kahn said he was grateful for were waking up pain-free, which I agree, that's an awesome one. Then also waking up to his lovely wife of 40 years, which is pretty beautiful. And being healthy. Well, and that's because of what he does. It works. So then we talked a little bit about his background, his life growing up, things like that. And he's from Michigan, and he became plant-based at a young age, not for any particular reason necessarily. I think he just kind of gravitated towards it. If you go back and look at his story and with college and things like that, I think that's just what was available to him, and he stuck with it. He said he's been for 44 years vegan, and his career has been in cardiology has been 31 years, I believe he said, and he's extremely healthy. I asked him some of the labs that he checks, because I know there's a lot of debate about whether being purely vegan is healthy for most people. And some of the things that he checks on a regular basis are B12, vitamin D, and omega-3s. And I completely agree. Those are 3 of the main things that people in general, but also vegans specifically, do need to be aware of and check and make sure they have the proper nutrient profiles and vitamins and minerals that they should be getting. Then we moved into mindfulness and some of the things that he practices, which is yoga, meditation, and some of the things that he recommends with meditation for his patients and everybody else that he speaks to. He mentioned a few times Kirtan Kriya, which is a 12-minute meditation. He also mentioned transcendental meditation, and these involves different kinds of breath works. And he definitely recommended that people go and check those out online. There's a lot of different resources. Again, it's Kirtan Kriya and Transcendental Meditation. Then we moved into a little bit about cardiology, and that cardiovascular disease is the number one cause of death in the US and the world. So it's pretty important. If you're interested in not dying, that would be a good thing to be aware of. So let's see. With regards to cardiovascular disease, he said that eating more fruits and veggies, like legumes, seeds, for example, like flax seeds, are really important. And one of the things that he pointed out is that only a really small percentage of people actually eat the recommended amount of fruits and veggies per day. And I think you can go onto the WHO website, and they have recommendations for all of these things. I recommend eating more, and he did too, actually say to eat more than what those recommendations are. But nonetheless, at least there's some kind of numbers there for you to go by, but I would probably at least increase those by probably 50% or so. And then we went into another question, which I asked him, is nutrition the most important factor in determining overall health? And he said it's obviously extremely important. However, what he feels is really important for people to be aware of, and that it is as least as important, is sleep. And he recommends that people not stay up really late staring at screens, especially like to get projects done or work done, things like that, because if you look into, there's a ton of research on staying up late and staring at the screen and the light, and how the blue light affects our hormones and circadian rhythm and things like that. So not staying up really late, don't stare at the screens, and trying to get at least 7 hours of sleep like he does. And then another question here, and this was the most shocking part of the interview for me, because I asked him about other plant-based cardiologists and physicians, and how their success stories with being plant-based and their patients being plant-based have gone, and how there's so many stories of people reversing and healing from cardiovascular disease, and a lot of times most of this is reversible without surgery. And then I asked him, why is it so, why are there so many professionals, even integrative and functional medicine doctors, recommending animal-based products as part of a healthy lifestyle? And even though there's research showing this, and I asked him what he feels about these findings, and to sum it up, and this was his answer basically, and I quote, he said, "It's fucked up." So he's really dove into the research. He's had a lot of discussions and debates with different doctors and practitioners about this, and you'll see in the next part of this when he comes in, he talks about some of the funding and the discrepancies with research these days, and conflicts of interest and things like that. One of the other really important things that he talks about a lot on his Instagram page, and that I think is extremely important, and I've actually had my parents go and do this since he talked about it, which is the coronary artery calcium score test. And basically this is a CT scan that just about anybody can elect to get done. You just have to go to your physician and ask them to prescribe the test for you. And in some places it's less than $100, and I believe that's without insurance. So it's pretty much available to anybody. And basically what the test does is it can show buildup in arteries, and is a key preventative measure that has low levels of radiation. So it allows the doctors to look and see how much buildup is actually in the arteries. And like I said, there's very low levels of radiation, and it's a preventative test that's just as important as a colonoscopy or a mammogram. So really, really important. Again, that's called the coronary artery calcium score. You can go and ask your physician about that. And then we talked a little bit about different diets, and ultimately from paleo, keto, veganism, things like that. And he ultimately said it comes down to the individual and their specific needs, but everybody needs to be eating more plants. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And I think across the community, integrative and functional medicine doctors and allopathic medicine also. I mean, I don't know anybody that says that eating more plants is going to not be a good thing for you. So I think that's a pretty agreed upon fact. And that he had also mentioned that there's no paleo community with evidence of living to 100 years, which I kind of agree with. So, I mean, there's plenty of vegan communities that have displayed that, and there's a lot of research showing the benefits of it as well. So that is a quick recap about some of the things we talked about before we got cut off. My delivery is not nearly as good as his, and I apologize for that. And then when I'm going to switch back into the video, the rest of the interview with him, and I want to apologize for the blurry screen, which you'll see he'll mention something at the end. He had something going on with his phone. He was not sure. And I offered to start a GoFundMe so he could get a new phone. And you'll see he jokes about that. Other than that, I hope you guys are doing well. Stay tuned. Here's the rest of the interview. Thanks for watching. You were just in the middle of talking about saturated fats and the different types of saturated fats.
Right, and I do not feel, I don't advise people to, you want to eat a coconut, it's like cracking a walnut. It's a lost art. It's going to take you an hour. You're going to lose 500 calories just breaking that sucker apart. But if you're telling me you like to take 2-3 tablespoons of coconut oil in your coffee, I grant you're probably going to be less hungry by lunchtime, but you better darn check your cholesterol and make sure it's not affecting it adversely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the healthiest fats most people should be eating, and what do we find them in?
Yeah, I'm super cool with nuts, seeds, avocados, olives, and I'm super cool with really good extra virgin olive oil. That's a slight controversy in the cardiology community, or let's say the plant-based doctor community, because there are a couple small studies that suggest that extra virgin olive oil may have a transient negative effect on your arteries in healthy volunteers. There are more studies that say it doesn't in different populations. There are a lot worse things you can do than a little bit of extra virgin olive oil on your grilled zucchini or your grilled eggplant. So I'm pretty okay with all that. But some say avoid it completely. Totally different. Extra virgin olive oil is largely monounsaturated fats. It does have a small amount of saturated fat. There's a lot of fraud in that market, so you do want to spend a little better. But, avocados, nuts, seeds, olives. There's a range of whole fats in the diet that are all consistent with healthy. Some people prefer to be ultra low, like the original Dr. Ornish, Mr. Pritikin diet, and that works. And then there are places like Crete and Greece that because of extra virgin olive oil, they actually have a pretty high content of fat in their diet. That works pretty well too. So, I have a few patients I definitely want on the lower fat versions of those programs because of their advanced heart disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes. But for most, I got to get them a program they're going to stick with lifelong, and eating nothing but romaine lettuce and balsamic works for some people, but others I just got to be a little more liberal with.
And there's so much science going on around these different types of issues, and whether it's saturated fats, unsaturated fats, and the different types of unsaturated fats. I mean, people that want to look up science and try and evaluate these things for themselves. I mean, are there any kind of tips or views that you have on evaluating scientific literature, or any specific types of studies that you recommend people looking into?
Well, you always got to go to the end and look where the funding is from. That's unfortunate. There was a big brouhaha. I think it was just the fall of 2020. It may be as long ago as the fall of 2019, now that I think about it. But it was a researcher that put out a series of 5 papers in the Annals of Internal Medicine. It's a very prestigious journal. And they all suggested that when you really get down to it, meat's just fine. And at first it seemed like strange data. And then people started digging into the lead author, his funding, and then they found some stuff he hadn't disclosed. And it all just blew up as possibly very biased, financially related. It's hard. It's hard to do that. The newspapers will never do that. But I tell you, it works both ways. There are studies that document the healthy nature of avocados, and you turn to the back, and the studies sponsored by the Haas Avocado Board of California, the Walnut Board. It's hard to do nutritional science. It's expensive, and people with a self-interest, may be the only ones around to fund research. So that's the first thing to do. And there's just a few well-known people. When they come out with something, you're gonna have to slap your forehead and say, "Oh no, not again." Yeah.
So, I mean, of course, yourself included in this, but are there any particular sources that you recommend people seek out to find their information or to get their information?
To advise people listening what to do?
Yeah. Or that you point your patients to. I mean, yes, there's documentaries like Forks Over Knives and things like that.
I thought, listen to me. Listen to me. Email me. Read my books. No, I mean, granted, it's hard for any single person. Nutritionfacts.org, Dr. Michael Greger.
Yeah.
Perfect? He's not perfect, but he's got a lot more time and a much bigger staff to look at all the literature than any one of us. And with, several thousand videos, it's a good resource. I don't agree with every single thing he's ever put out, but the majority of it is spot on.
I completely agree.
He just did a whole series criticizing the hell out of cardiologists, but everything was based on the science, and some of my colleagues went bananas on him. That cancel culture. They wanted to send Michael Greger back, to some island and get him away from people. But he was exactly quoting the science, and sure, there's going to be disagreement. Physician Committee Responsible Medicine, Dr. Neil Barnard. Everybody says, sure, he's a vegan doctor. Well, why don't you ask him why he's a vegan doctor? Maybe he's read the science like I did and made a decision, although my transition was earlier than reading the science. But then I read the science. If I read the science and found out it was dangerous, I probably would have gone back to some other version of my mother's cooking. Like you said, Forks Over Knives. When people always argue they got skin in the game and they're biased, but really these people are dedicated to educate and provide testimonials and some medical support to lifestyle being, the single most important decision you can make.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I totally agree. I think those are some of the same resources that I use myself and that I recommend for patients as well. It's not necessarily always easy, but the resources are there. And I think if we just put in a little bit of effort to try and become a little bit better each day, in the long run, that really, I think, will work out for just about everybody.
And I've had a 5 to 10 year career. I've been involved in some very vigorous debates on national TV, Joe Rogan, and sometimes you just got to speak up and speak the truth. And in nutrition science, the truth is hazy. And again, it's impossible to dual study versus study because you got to read the damn thing and understand it, and understand the statistics. But there are a zillion health people out there with an opinion a minute, and I just really right now I'd be very cautious about paleo and keto as a long-term plan if it's a meat-heavy, low-carb approach, because the science couldn't be further from that.
Because
how sexy it is to see Halle Berry in a bikini on Instagram as a keto advocate. At least she was in the past. I'm not sure she still talks about it as much. She's not a scientist. She's not checking arteries. She's not checking, blood levels, and you're probably better off sticking with Forks Over Knives.
That makes sense to me. I mean, to my knowledge, I don't know a whole lot about keto. I've done a little bit of reading, but there are plant-based ways of approaching these lifestyle choices too.
If you really wanted to, I got to lose 8 pounds, and I'm so frustrated. You can take a giant plate of arugula and walnuts and tofu and maybe a few beans and put olive oil and some vinegar all over it, and it's probably going to be 75% fat calories. There's not a lot of data on that. There's a experience 20 years ago by a professor in Toronto called Eco Atkins. Not quite that aggressive, but they actually showed it to be a reasonably short-term healthy diet. I just wouldn't do that long-term. Do it for a week. or do Prolon, the fasting mimicking diet, Dr. Longo, for 5 days, and then go back to a bowl of oatmeal and do it
Makes
again.
sense.
I mean, cycle on and off.
I was going to say you can do cycles of these things, but when you are off that cycle, what you eat makes a big difference. You can't just go back to eating
Right.
fast food and junk again. I mean, it is a lifestyle. It's supposed to kickstart a lifestyle change for you. Um,
Hopefully.
yeah, that's. Um, and then I think there's something called Optavia Health. Is that, have you heard of that when it comes to
I've heard
keto?
of it. I actually just was on their website the other day because a patient was mentioning it, but no experience and no real comment.
Gotcha. So we've been talking a lot about nutrition. Are there any other more lifestyle-based choices besides nutrition that have a significant impact on health and wellness that you point out to people?
I mean, as I say, I try and go through sleep, number one,
Mm-hmm.
and then nutrition, number two, and then some fitness that doesn't cause injury. I mean, I have patients that are training for, triathlons, and I help them. I'll never do a triathlon, and I'm not the guy that's going to coach them through it. I'll
Mm-hmm.
check their heart out, and I'll optimize their nutrition and their supplements. But obviously, you got to move the body. I'm at a standing desk. I'm always at a standing desk. I do HIIT exercises. And, I recommend my people try and get 20 to 30 minutes a day minimum every day. Just don't hurt
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Yoga, stretching, weights,
Mm-hmm.
and cardio. And then, some stress management. But we talk about the kirtan, kriya,
Mm-hmm.
and those are the cores.
And, and someone's asking about intermittent fasting. Do you
Well,
recommend that for
yeah,
patients or?
just to say it for the third time, what I teach in my clinic is Dr. Longo's science,
Yeah.
the Prolon fasting mimicking diet. It's prepackaged, it's scientific, it's been studied, it's been researched, it's been used by tens and tens of thousands of people. There's no better program. You just got to be tough for 5 or 6 days
Mm-hmm.
and go back to a healthy diet. And that's what I do. I cycle on and off Prolon every few months. That's
Gotcha.
kind of he would cringe to call it a detox or a cleanse, but a change in my diet to uh, vary up my microbiome, go into a little gentle ketosis, and just, play with it a little bit.
Great. And you mentioned something that we haven't really talked a whole lot about, which was stress and how damaging that can be to our health and cardiovascular system. What does that kind of cascade look like when someone's just overwhelmed with stress and how it affects our cardiovascular system?
There's undoubtedly, if your cortisol goes up, your blood sugar goes up, your cholesterol might go up, your stress hormones like adrenaline might go up and constrict your arteries. But it's really the lifestyle that goes with it. It's the tequila, it's the chips, it's the sitting there late at night on the computer trying to get a damn work project done rather than exercise, rather than family time, rather than mindfulness. It's just the cycle that ensues when you're under the gun. You got a lot to get done, or you got a lot of bills, or you got a lot of stress in the family relations you're working on. So, you'll be better at managing all those things if you can come up with a strategy for your stress that's helpful, like go walk barefoot in the grass, go take a 10-minute run, go sit quietly in a corner and do your kirtan kriya, go do rosary, chant, but
Mm-hmm.
fight hard, picking the bad lifestyle habits to, quote, manage your stress.
Absolutely. So I want to be respectful of your time. So we're gonna start wrapping up. But one of the last questions I have for you is, what's one of the most memorable or inspiring stories you have since you've become a cardiologist?
I had great mentors. So I trained to be a cath lab, heart attack, balloon stent guy. And I just had the greatest year in Kansas City, Missouri. It was way long ago, 1989, 1990. And my mentor has passed away, Dr. Jeffrey Hartzler. He had a poster in his office, and I do a very bad job of listening to this, but it was, I don't know the secret to success, but I know the secret to failure, which is never saying no. Because it's so easy to pile your plate on, and I'm really, really prone to that. Sure, I'll do an interview and a podcast, and I'll see patients all day long, and then I'll work tonight on a book chapter. Sometimes you say no. So Sometimes I say no to nice people like you. I didn't want to today. Sometimes I say no to book chapters, and I say no to online summits. And, you know, we only got 24 hours in a day, and, you know, people say you can really judge, you know, what's really important to you by where you spend most of your time. So I'm clearly a workaholic by any criteria, if you looked at that. But, you know, that is impactful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
And as my last question, and if this were the last time you ever had to share your thoughts, and you could only share 3 things to sum all of this up that people should start implementing in their lives immediately to improve their health, what would they be?
1, eat your damn fruit and vegetables. Number 2, move your damn booty. And number 3, go to bed on time and do 15 different things to get 7 hours of sleep if you need to, like I do. That's it.
Great. I think those are absolutely wonderful recommendations. I completely agree. And everybody, thank you for coming on here and taking a look at this interview. Dr. Kahn, thank you very much for being on here. Everybody, please obviously check out Dr. Kahn's website, his Instagram account. He's got tons and tons of fantastic information on there. The Instagram is at Dr. Drj Kahn, Kahn. And of course, as always, I always recommend or welcome comments, feedback, and suggestions. Please check out the other episodes on my YouTube channel, The Art of Mindful Medicine, and of course my website, www.mindful.doctor. We are always on Instagram Live, and I'll always give a nice announcement a few days before the next episode. And I always like to end with a quote. And this is something that you actually posted a few days ago that I saw that I really loved. And I think it's from what you said, and it is, if your position in life doesn't permit you to speak your truth, get a new position in life.
Yeah, that's credited to the very famous Joel Kahn, MD. I made that up. But there's a lot of people in the vegan medical world that have been really silenced about speaking. It's just you can't question anything in the last year and a quarter. I have fortunately got a position. I'm not dependent on a hospital, contract. I can't get fired. My wife can fire me. That's the only one. So, I mean, there's weird crap happening out there in the nutrition world and this little pandemic thing world, and all the rest. So, I have been criticized for opening my mouth and studying science. I think we should never lose the ability to question and ask. And I appreciate you bringing up that comment. It's true.
Yeah,
it's not always easy. I mean, I'm 31 years of a very zigzag career to get to the point where I don't have to worry too much about being scientifically sound but outspoken. But people get fired. I mean, one of my colleagues in Dallas basically got asked to leave major medical center for speaking out about the science of COVID, and he knew exactly what he was saying. So, don't jeopardize your family's dinner for your ability to speak out. But if you have the chance, God knows we need some honest people trying to dig through the muck. Well, 100%. Thank you. I'm going to go.
Yes. Thank you very much again. I appreciate your time, and thank you one last time for coming on here.
Yeah, sorry about the fuzziness. If you do want to do that GoFundMe, I think it'd be cool.
I appreciate it. Don't worry about the fuzziness. Okay. And have a great rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for watching, everybody.